Spent 3 years in Chicago. You did a lot of shit after that.
Yeah.
What was the next duty station after that, and kind of walk us through
Yeah,
that?
sure. So I left Chicago. Felt like we accomplished a lot there. I mean, it was just tens of millions of dollars and hundreds of weapons, and it was just crazy. So, but I wanted to go to overseas spot again. I wanted to do something crazier than Chicago. And Venezuela was open, and Venezuela is just like cowboy land. You know, the office went from like 15 guys, 20 guys, to like 2 guys. And the president at the time, Hugo Chavez, was, saying DEA were spies, were kicking him out of the country. In 2005, they said, you're out. Well, this is 2009, right? So I'm having lunch with my boss at the time, Scott, the guy I had mentioned. And I was really broke because I had been divorced, came to see my kids in Chicago, but I couldn't even afford to live. It's kind of, weird. Here I'm seizing tens of millions of dollars in cash, but I have to get like in a change jar to go to Dairy Queen to buy 2 hot dogs for 99 cents. You know what I mean? I'm just so fucking broke. I could barely make my house payment and pay insurance and all these things for this little house, and I lived way out in Indiana so I could have a cheap place to live. I could barely make. I couldn't survive well. So I was like, I need to go overseas again, and I want to go somewhere that's going to be like crazy. So, and Venezuela at the time still is an epicenter of the flow of narcotics to the U.S. And it's basically the socialistic movement, similar to that of Cuba, where it was on the premise of we're going to share the equity of the wealth of the country with everyone, and then that it always goes down the path of erosion to where it's like, okay, now you have this business, now it's Venezuela's business, you just fucking go away or we'll kill you. Oh, buy all this farmland? Well, that's not equitable until it's distributed to everyone, so we're going to take it. And then they give it to their cousin or their uncle or whatever, some military commander, whatever, and people are losing their lives and farm, whatever. And then they're developing relationships with other criminal organizations, such as the FARC in Colombia, to, number one, hide out their criminals that are wanted in the Colombian government that they might be at risk of being captured. So they go to Venezuela and hang out and pay. The FARC will pay the Venezuelan Cartel de los Soles, which is all over the news now because now they're OFAC designated. They're a terrorist organization, and that's all run by the president, the vice president, their cabinet, and a bunch of military commanders. It's called the Cartel de los Soles because they have the generals, which typically it's not all generals, but the big shots. Instead of stars like our generals, they have sons on their appellate. So the Cartel de los Soles, of course, Chavez is the president, and he says, okay, we're doing the socialistic movement. Really, we're just robbing from everyone to enrich ourselves, but we'll call it socialism. And we're going to flood the United States with all the cocaine and terrorism nexus individuals we can so that we can destroy the Imperio. He called it the Yankee, the Imperio, or the Imperial Yankees, right? Because we were a threat to his socialistic cause, right? Just like with Cuba, right? So what happens? Venezuela starts bringing in Iran and their boats. Russia's landing their big strategic bombers in Venezuela. So you have Hezbollah, Hamas, all these different nefarious players going to Venezuela. You have, going back into the 90s, you have terrorist organizations are sending people there to backfill all of their identities with passports, birth certificates, everything. Because back in the early 90s, before the socialistic movement took hold and it's turned into shit and their economy went to hell and then it came straight up dictatorship, their passport actually meant something back then. So you have all these, different countries that were sending terrorist individuals that had to go out and procure further things around the globe and say, give them a Venezuelan passport with this guy named Tarek al-Assaimi. Tarek al-Assaimi is the former vice president of Venezuela. When I was there, he was the justice minister. As far as I know, I'm the only U.S. agent to ever have met this guy. And I'll tell you about that in a little bit. So we got a real shitbox in Venezuela. That's why I wanted to go. I was like, this place is perfect. I can go down there, and I mean, it's just going to be like, how can I meet with all these people that are indicted? Some are, some aren't. How can I meet with them? How can I get further evidence? How can I target other people that are there? Because don't forget, we have high-value targets that are hiding out there and paying money for the government, the Cartel de los Soles, to provide them cover. We had Cali Cartel members left over from, Dave Mitchell and Chris Feistel days when they took, those are two famous DEA agents that were from the show Narcos.
Yeah.
When they were doing the Cali Cartel, and some of their guys were hiding out in Venezuela. So I'm like, fuck, I get to go down there and actually be not a part of their case, because these guys are all like the pinnacle of what DEA was, with Javier Pena and Steve Murphy and all the things that happened with, the cartels down there at the time, Pablo Escobar. And I said, man, I get to put hands potentially. How am I going to go down there? Because I'm not working with the government. The Venezuelan government's not going to work with me, right? So I was like, I'm going to go down there and figure this out. So I talked with my buddy Scott, and I tell him where I want to go. He's like, what the fuck you want to go to Venezuela for? Are you crazy? I was like, dude, it's like open season down there. I can like actually be an agent down there. It'd be awesome. And he's like, whatever, man. He goes, just like 2 weeks ago, I met with the regional director over that whole thing, the senior executive guy that ran. His name is Jay Bergman. And he goes, because unless you got a rabbi somewhere else, I can call this guy for you. I said, I ain't got no rabbi, dude. Who's your rabbi? And he's like, Jay Bergman. I'm going to call him for you. And I didn't know Jay Bergman at the time. And Jay's actually Jewish. And so he's like, yeah, let me call the rabbi. So right there at lunch, he calls him. And he picks up the phone. And I hear him talking. Yeah, no, good dude. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. He goes, all right, he's going to send him a resume. He'll think about it. And then he'll look at your background and decide if he's going to take you. So, like, maybe a month later, put in for the job. Boom, boom, boom. Get a call. You got the job. I was like, awesome. So, spring of 2010, I go down TDY. Just temporary duty to begin with, because they have to give you a visa. The Venezuelan government did not want to provide diplomats of the U.S. visas, because everyone's a spy. We're only sending spies to Venezuela, which is just bullshit. And we have State Department, we have U.S. citizens that are U.S. Venezuelan, we have transit, we have tourism still at this time, 2010. We had boaters that were going into the islands north of Venezuela. We have Bonaire, we have Aruba, we have all these areas where Americans go that are close to Venezuela. So, but he knew that he had to kind of pull the Cuban playbook because, F around and find out kind of thing. And he was afraid that the Imperio, the U.S., Uncle Sugar was going to come down hard on him. So he was always paranoid. So when I got down there, I had a visa. And we would do a vice. So they would give a high-level guy like me going down there, I was a country attaché at the time, with DEA, which is like the last guy they want down there, right? And then we would give one of their high-level generals or someone that was of importance or a family member of a general or vice president or whatever a visa, right? And then they would get to go to Gringolandia while I got to go down to shithole Venezuela, right? So when I landed, I remember that weekend, when you land on the ground, you walk in, it feels like you're in North Korea. Murals of Hugo Chavez in his white shirt or his red shirt. He always wore red, communist red, and well, socialist red, because of course we wouldn't want to confuse the two by any means, because the end result always ends up the same thing, right? So you walk in, and I was being followed from the moment I arrived. They knew who I was. They knew I was coming. They had the flight information. They have me in line. A guy approaches me. Hey, how you doing? He's a Cuban guy, actually. Because what a lot of people don't know is in Venezuela, they have a lot of Cuban intelligence personnel that act as a buffer and a protection to the higher level Venezuelans that are working in conjunction with the Cuban government. It's like a backstop. So if you have a traitorous Venezuelan, a Cuban will be there watching that official from Venezuela to ensure that there's no funny business going on, because nothing can, break the Venezuelan, creed and moral. Everyone's got to be on the Venezuelan team. If they smell a rat, the Cubans will,
Sniff it out.
make sure to snip it out as well. So it's always double backed. So he's talking to me. What are you doing here? I was like, come on, dude. He smiles. I said, listen, I'm just going to the embassy. Here's my diplomatic shit, So we get in the car. Fast forward, I'm getting briefed on everything that's going on in the country. It's a lot. It's a fucking lot of shit. I'm going to go to the mall on the weekend and get a cup of coffee. So I'm in my armored car. We had Land Cruisers armored, like level 3. Kind of worthless, really. Just fucking shoot the engine. You're going to be, burned up in a matter of minutes and then smoke you out of the car or whatever. But it was something for like a street level crime. Go to the mall. It's Sambil Mall, which is like millions of square feet. It's huge. They have a train station in it. It makes the Mall of America look like a church steeple. I mean, it's just massive mall. And I walk in and I hear just a crowd just going nuts. And it's the World Cup. And it's Ghana against the United States. So I walk to this rotunda area. It's like maybe 5 or 6 stories tall. Kind of like the old embassy suites, where they have the rooms on the edge, while all the stores are on the edge, and it's all empty in the middle. And so I walk in, and they're all like, "Down with America," basically, in Spanish, and "Patio fuera," all these things, not voting, but chanting for Ghana, and "Down with the U.S." And I was like, wow, but it was just a roar. And I was like, man, and I'm sitting there, I have my Notre Dame Irish shirt on and big, tall gringo with the clover leaf. And I'm like, this is not good, man. I actually ducked into a store, bought like an Argentine soccer jersey, blue, I think it was a river. And I pay right there and I put it on in the store, like go around the corner or whatever, put it on and walk out, get the fuck out of there. I'm like, okay, this is going to be different.
Wow.
This is going to be very different.
And so what was now that you're feet on the ground, what was the order of operation and the emphasis of you being there?
So I can't talk about some of that stuff, but what I can talk about is we had high-value targets that we wanted to grab, right? But it wasn't like I'm working in a cooperative environment. I'm working in like a denied country, a denied area that doesn't want me there. They want to watch what I'm doing and then try to develop maybe leads in what I'm trying to go after, right? At that same time, we had traffickers that were actually sending hackers to go after me. So I had Cuban intel was on me, Venezuelan intel. I lived at one point near the Iranian embassy, so I had some of those intel people. Everyone, just hodgepodge of everyone was trying to keep an eye on and I was alone. So some of these operations, I did so many things on my own. I'd go out by myself and do that, and I'd tell the Marine at base, these kids that work in the Marine Corps guard staff, I'd say, if you don't hear from me by 0300, I'm fucking gone. And I'm not telling you really where I'm going or whatever, but here's the deal. And they'd be like, like 23-year-old Marine. He's like, roger that, and they take down notes. I said, so if I don't fucking call you, they need to come looking for me. He's like, what the fuck? You could just go by yourself. I'm like, roger that. And then I would go out, and then I'd call them when I got back. Hey, everything good at the embassy? Yes, sir. Okay, click. That's it.
Were you staying out in town?
I'm sorry?
Were you living out in town or at the embassy?
No, I was living out and about. I had to keep moving closer to the embassy because I kept having threats. So they kept moving me closer to the embassy.
Yeah, I mean, that seems dicey as hell by itself. Yeah. Like, why wouldn't they have you stay at the embassy, or can't you?
No one stays at the embassy except for the Marines. Even the Marine house was off embassy grounds. They were building a Marine house on the embassy grounds right before I left.
I mean, that seems crazy to me. Like, that's asking for it, having you stay out in town.
Yeah.
Like, well, I mean, is that ever a concern that you ran up the flagpole, or?
Well, the first time I had a contract on me, I had to leave the country for a few weeks. We had a couple different sources from different parts of the world independently call in to different places, and then the flags start going up kind of quick. The first case that I had, it was not DEA sources, it was some other sources, and I got a phone call to come into the embassy and meet the DCM, or the Deputy Chief of Mission. And they were like, hey, there's a fucking threat on you. They're going to try to kill you. So you have to like get the fuck out of the country while we figure out what's going on, you know, and I can't really get into more detail than that. And I flew to Hawaii. I flew to the U.S., then I flew another place, then I flew another place, then I flew to Hawaii. So I wouldn't fly direct, obviously. I didn't want them to know where I was at. So I had 3 weeks in Hawaii, fucking miserable the whole time, because I'm like, who's trying to kill me? What's going on with that? Well, they're kind of sorting that out. I had told my boss that I just needed a vacation. I didn't tell him about the potential contract on my life, because I didn't want them to kick me out of the country because I was doing too much work there. And so I called him, and I'm like, hey, I need a vacation. He's like, what the fuck you mean? I said, I'm telling you, I need a vacation. And State Department really wasn't talking to DEA, right, at that time. And he didn't want me out of country either. And I was willing to just say, fuck it, I'll go back. So it was kind of like one of those weird things. So after 3 weeks, it was kind of cool. We kind of made some determination I can go back. I went back. But I was still at risk, you know, of getting killed there. Yeah. But I was doing super high. I was going after one of the members of the Cartel de los Soles, super high level guy. That's just one example. But I would go out, Mike. I would go out on these operations. I went out one time. We were trying to catch this major trafficker. I had a guy that I was working with. I was posing as his informant with a mask over my head. I was out in the middle of nowhere with him and his crew. His crew thought I was this big chief's informant. I had a mask over my head so they wouldn't see I was a gringo. And we're out there waiting for this guy who we're tracking to come in. And I'm all by myself. And I was like, if this breaks bad, I'm going to have to go, you know, steal a boat, go to Aruba. I won't be able to get back to the embassy. I always had the primary, secondary, tertiary, you know, plan where I'm going to go and how I'm going to get out every time I went out, just in case it went bad. Had Glock and a coil beacon. You remember the old coil beacons where you pull the top and the antenna comes out? That's it. A Glock and a coil beacon with a BlackBerry. And halfway through this thing, he didn't know who the target was. I didn't tell him till the very last second. So then when I told him, he starts texting and doing all that. I'm like, whoa, stay off your phone, dude. He goes, no, it's all good. And I'm listening to the radio, and he was clearly advised not to fucking tell them to do anything unless I told them to do it, right? So we started, you know, at whatever, 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Now it's like 10:30 at night. All the guys that were on the chat are all fucking, you know, beard out or turkeyed out or whatever. And it's just like me, like, and I didn't even have backup. The Marine knew I was out. If I don't fucking call you, you know, at fucking 3 a.m., I'm fucked. You need to come send the troops out, right? So in between, when the guy was coming into town, we were going to grab him. All of a sudden, the guy fucking starts going up this mountain road with me in the back, and he's on his radio. And I'm like, what are you doing? And I pulled my gun on him. He was going to pull his rifle on me. And he's like, oh no, as we're like going up the hill. So he said, no, they got him. And I'm like, had my gun. He's like, what are you doing with the fucking gun? I was like, what are you fucking doing bringing me up here? It's like a Mexican standoff, right? And I'm just figuring if he pulls that gun on me, I'm just going to fucking kill him, throw him out of the car, take his car to wherever I can, dump it, get another car. I mean, that's how I'm thinking, right? Just that's what I have to do, whatever I have to do. So he's like, no, we got him. It's all good. Just put the fucking gun down. Relax. What are you doing? I'm not going to hurt you. There's nothing wrong here, right? I'm like, shit. So I'm like, do I fucking get out of the car here in the middle of nowhere by myself, or do I go back with him where he can have these guys fucking roll me up? Because I'm not fucking going. You know what I mean? And we used to say that, you know, in DEA, save one for yourself, you know? Because I'm not going to be like Kiki Camarena, right? Where they're tortured and all that shit. I'll just fucking do it myself. Do I want to? No, I don't want that. But I was like, you know, all this shit goes through in your mind, you know, not to be like over dramatic on it, but you think about this stuff. You have to. So we go back and they have the wrong guy. They had just fucking blew the case kind of thing. Just the guy I was using didn't know how big the target was. And when I told him, he was like, fuck this. Whoever he's communicating with, they're like, fucking, you're not doing it. But don't kill this agent. but you have to fucking whatever. But I didn't know what was going on. So they're beating the shit out of this guy. They bring him to the window. He's all fucking bloody and shit. They're like, this is him. I'm like, no, it's not him. And he's looking at me like he knows. And I'm like, just fucking take me back to my car. He's like, oh, it's not him. You sure? I'm like, yeah, it's not him. He's like, oh, man, you're never going to work with me again, aren't you? He goes, no. I go, no, we're all good. I just want to get the fuck out of there. We're all good. So he takes me back to my car. I get in my car, I'm gone. I never worked with that guy again, obviously. So these were the kinds of things that were happening down there in Venezuela, but I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one scene after the next, like out of a movie, all these stories that you have. Yeah. I am curious, I mean, there's an absurd amount of trust and autonomy that you are afforded being in a position that way where you're the only guy down there. But I'm curious, who do you report to? And more importantly, like, what is the measure of success?
So I was reporting originally to a guy in Bogota, Colombia, and then they switched it to a guy in Quito, Ecuador. So I was a country attaché, and I reported to an assistant regional director, but really the regional director, the guy who we called the rabbi, Jay Bergman, Jay would call me direct all the time.
But I mean, is it a, hey, keep up the good work? I mean, they don't really even know what you're doing or not doing. I mean, like, how do they even interact with you in a managerial fashion? So
what I was doing was I was doing these captures that, like, the normal person had no clue who they were, who was behind them. Plus the intel I was getting on all these high-level Cartel de las Soles guys. And they were seeing that, but no one else, like, in the world knew anything. But my boss was like, holy shit, he's killing it. Yeah. And so, we've since been on some National Geographic specials and things like that where the stories are kind of being told. Of course, now on some of these podcasts, I still can't talk about some of the cases, obviously. Yeah. They're still going, but the amount of risk I was taking there was it was very high. Yeah, it was very high. But I loved it. I missed it. I miss it to this day. Yeah. I mean, it was just
Wild West.
It was the Wild West, and that's what
That's what any
we
of
live
us
for this.
sign up
That's
to.
what we want, right?
Yeah. You did that up until 2012, right?
Yeah, 2012. And then when I left, I had to do my headquarters tour as a supervisor, and Jay actually assigned me to do work with the agency. So I did 3 years as a DEA agent assigned to the agency. I was basically like an embedded L&O, right? So I was liaison embedded with them, working as a U.S. law enforcement officer, DEA agent, helping with different counter narcotics and some CT stuff on the North Coast in different areas, Caribbean, Western Hemisphere area. I won't get too specific on it, but and I did that, and that was it was an interesting experience. The agency and DEA have a very different kind of relationship.
In what way?
We call them the cousins. So DEA calls them the cousins because Papa Bush, President Bush, he actually recreated DEA in a sense in the 80s. He created the new DEA Center for Training along with the FBI, because when I went to the DEA Academy, it was actually in the FBI building with them. They'd have a floor of FBI, a floor of DEA, FBI, DEA, and we kind of ate and drank and did everything together, at that time. And then they opened up their own, we opened up our own DEA training center. But President Bush was a very heavy influence on the CIA, very heavy influence on the DEA. And, look at Noriega. When Noriega happened, that was Papa Bush. And who was in charge of that case? DEA. I mean, we were doing crazy shit, with submarines and cargo planes and informants and money to make that case happen and grab General Noriega. And that was when the change and shift of DEA was, a lot of strength and power, because we had our rabbi, right, Papa Bush. And so he had a very heavy influence on the modern day CIA as well. So we had a lot of likeness, but a lot of difference, because law enforcement is not intelligence, even though we're part of the intelligence community. we do things very differently than the CIA does. When I was in Venezuela with DEA, I would do drops, dead drops, cell phones, cards, notes, communication. I would do that all over the city. I had, at any time, 12, 13 cell phones that I would rotate every month. They were shipping in the phones through diplomatic courier, so they were secure. And then I had a board in my office with a hatchet. I had to cut out my phones every month in little pieces and drive around at night and throw them over the bridges. And I had to do that all the time to hide these phones and the communication. So not that the CIA does those things, but we have our own way of doing, like what we say, spooky stuff. And CIA does their things, whatever they do. I'm not going to talk about any of that stuff, but with DEA, we do things that can be looked at as very similar, and we do it our way in a law enforcement way. It's very different. So my boss was like, "It'd be a good job for you to go do that."
Yeah.